Well, good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning. Well, whatever it is. My name is Jim Provost. I'm going to spend the next 15 to 19 minutes talking to you about data science and hopefully impress upon you that conceptually, this is something you can understand as well. I'm about to take a photo shoot, so give me one sec. Quick bit about Lixar. We are a 17-year-old startup company. It literally started in Leroy's basement in Westboro. I've seen that basement. I'm thankful we have a lovely new office out in Riverside by the baseball diamonds. We are now about 180 people, including an office out in Halifax, and people all over the country. Woo! For Halifax? All right, that'll work too. We focus mostly on air, auto, and telecommunications, but we also have 4 main pillars, including enterprise mobile, data science. We've been doing IoT before it was cool, and we're certified in the cloud. For enterprise mobile, if you've been on one of the 5 air carriers that use all of our iPads and tablets and buy on board and e-pill solutions, you've probably seen what we do there. That's the stuff I'm most proud of. In terms of data science, we do a lot of things in terms of predicting the future. That's how I sell my job. If you want to know your marketing spend and how much it's going to return on ROI, I can tell you in advance. If you want to know which 6 clients are most likely to churn in the next 12 months, I can tell you that in advance. For Air Canada Jazz, we were talking about a solution to their tail swap problem. How do you keep birds flying as long as possible and reduce the maintenance delays that keep people on the ground and grounded? Every time you're delayed, it hurts, and it hurts a lot. In terms of IoT, I remember we were doing some really cool smart home stuff back in 2004, 2003, and now we have these things called Proxy. These are little Bluetooth beacons that we set out around various airports and stadiums and concert venues, and you can track as people walk through and go through the stadium. Where are the bottlenecks? Do you need more people by the baggage claim because there's too many people waiting there? This is the future of IoT, and it's only not that far away. In terms of cloud, our biggest thing that I'm most proud of is probably the Delphi connected car. There's hundreds of thousands of cars right now across North America, Europe, and Asia that have a little OBD dongle you plug in, and it sends data up to Microsoft Azure. In doing that, we can track everything from battery voltage to tire pressure problems to knowing how good a driver you are based on how you accelerate and how you brake. That's the cool thing about data and why I love my job. Very quickly, let's talk about what data means in your company. People across the board have a spectrum of whether they're in their data infancy. God, I hate using buzzwords, but there's things you can leverage to get further down the road as well. To understand that you need to have a structure to your data and a plan and a roadmap before you start doing some high-level BI stuff or AI stuff is really, really important. To fix those changes and make sure you're doing the right things at the beginning, all developers in the room know, is 100 times cheaper than trying to fix it later on down the road. We learned a couple years ago that you can't just hire a data scientist, go put them in the corner and say, hey, go do data science. It doesn't work that way. Not only do you need buy-in from the top, but you also need 3 very separate and very specialist skills. We call them engineering, visualization, and data science. So the engineering guys are the network plumbers that understand databases and security. They really get the data flowing in the most efficient way possible. Visualization people, we like to call half graphic design, half B-school graduate, who really understand the business case and the motivation behind looking at the graph. You know when you see a chart and you just understand exactly what it means right away? That's the magic they do. The third pillar is data science. That's the nerds like me that actually take that data and help predict the future. All right, so let's talk now actually about the data you have in your place and signal versus noise. But I want to start in probably the most embarrassing time for everyone, and it was high school. Standing up here now, I regret choosing these photos, but I'm locked in because we submitted our decks a couple weeks ago. I went to the Woodland School in Mississauga, Ontario, and I had a prof there named Dr. Neil Reed. He changed my life, so much so that I'm standing up here talking to you about it because it was so cool. One of the things he taught us is Sierpinski's triangle. Take a random triangle and pick a random dot, anywhere. Then roll a die. If you get a 1 or a 2, choose the top. A 3 or a 4, choose the bottom left. Roll a 5 or a 6, choose the bottom right. Let's say you roll a 5. Draw a line between the dot and the edge, and find the midpoint between the two, and draw a new dot. With me? Repeat, repeat, repeat. Repeat 100 times. Repeat 1,000 times. Repeat 30,000 times. In 1969, Sierpinski found order and patterns in randomness and chaos. Now, the great thing is this is fundamental to data across the board. Your data in your nonprofit or your company or your startup has these fundamental latent things that can't be seen normally by humans. We call it a signal versus noise problem. Every time you drive down the Queensway and the radio kicks out, you're experiencing the signal versus noise problem. There's not enough radio signal coming through to actually hear the music. For those in the room old like me who remember having to get off the couch to change the damn channel, you remember this problem. Literal white noise that was blocking your ability to see the television signal you wanted. As a data scientist, it's not my job to program computers. My job fundamentally is to organize the data in the best way to increase the signal and reduce the noise. I choose my words carefully. Computers are not taught by me. The computers learn by themselves. It's just my job to organize the data, and after that, the algorithms take care of themselves because they're better than humans in finding that underlying pattern that we just don't see as obvious or normal in what we do. How good are computers getting? Well, you all know this, the self-driving cars and all that stuff, but it's astounding. Last year, Microsoft released a language translation real-time system. Picture the guys at the United Nations with the microphones on. The dot you care about is the one on the bottom right corner there, an error rate of 6.3%. That is as good as humans at translating languages in real time. At scale, 24/7. Just so you think I'm not throwing out a red herring, let's talk about image classification and categorization. To look at a picture and identify all the various things on that picture, for the average human, the error rate is about 5 to 5.5%. Just last year, Microsoft released a neural network that can do it in 3.5% error, almost twice as good as humans. In fact, this year, IBM did even better. Not only that, look at the error. In the last 5 years, we've reduced the amount of error in that problem by tenfold in 5 years. I don't know what the next 5 years are going to involve, but I'm really happy to be involved with it. Conceptually, what I'm talking about is not a difficult thing to do. You have a lot of data, and you have historically an answer you know to be correct. You can teach a machine to do it correctly and well. But it takes domain knowledge, too. Let's think of a simple example. We're going back to first-year stats or grade 12 stats for those people who remember these types of things. This is called a linear regression. I see someone nodding. Math nerd in the second row. I love it. On the horizontal axis, I have the temperature outside, and on the vertical axis, I have the number of sales of, I don't know, ice cream that we're selling. It's very clear to see that as the temperature goes up, I sell more. It's great. Right? You're taking your data and moving to the next level. You're predicting very nearly in the future what you need to know. How much staff do I need? How much inventory do I need? Do I want to get to a point where I don't have any ice cream left and can't make that sale? This helps you out. Let's flip it around. I'm going to change the axes on you, but keep the data exactly the same. What I'm showing now is that as you sell more, the temperature increases. That's mathematically right. I mean, it's technically right, which of course we know is the best kind of right, but it's also the most useless kind of right. If you throw all your data into a magic box, out comes correlations. You can see stuff like this. You get a machine that says, if you want to have a great weekend at the cottage, you better sell some ice cream because it's going to make it really warm. We all know that's bullshit. But you need an expert, you need a domain knowledge to recognize what data is valuable and what data isn't. There's signal everywhere if you know where to find it. All right, so what does a data scientist do on the weekend? I was interested in looking at if I could predict the score to a hockey game before the game was finished, or even without watching it. So this was a Sens-Bruins game from a couple weekends ago, and what I did was I collected all the tweets that mentioned the Senators of the Bruins. There was about 100,000 of them, and I did some machine learning to do a sentiment score. 0 means people are really pissed off and things are unpleasant. 1 at the top means things are going great and super happy. And you can see in general, the Bruins yellow line, their fans were generally happier throughout the game. Senators people, I don't know, we're grumpy in Ottawa, it's what we do. We're just generally less happy than them in terms of our tweets going through. Now, without watching the game, because I don't have cable TV, I know exactly when that overtime goal happened, and I know exactly who won. And you do too by looking at this graph, right? You can see the spike up. There's signal in everything. There's signal everywhere if you know where to find it. This is probably the most technical bit I'll get in this presentation. I'm going to say the word model. For any psych grads in the room, you know what a model is. For everyone else, very simply, if you have a function or a math or something that spits out a number at the end, You have a model. Congratulations, you're a data scientist. Like I said, if you have a large amount of data and want to predict the future, you can. Let's say I know what month it is and the temperature outside, and I have historical data saying how many sick days there are. My theory is that when it's super nice outside in July, there's going to be a lot more sick days for my employees. Given a whole bunch of data, and given some known result about sick days, I can build a model that can predict that future, and you can too. Doing this is simple. Doing it well is hard. Most people attribute this next quotation to Mark Twain. He said, "I apologize for the length of this letter. It is longer than usual because I did not have the time to make it shorter." Editing is a signal versus noise problem. Marketing is a signal versus noise problem. Presenting is a signal versus noise problem. I'm trying to get an idea across to you in the simplest way possible, knowing that there's lunch on the other side of me talking, right? That's noise that's bringing up the distraction in the room. It wasn't actually Mark Twain. It was a guy named Blaise Pascal who said that originally back in the 1600s. He lived back in the days when you can have a whole bunch of math things named after you because they were just learning stuff left and right. Now you need a PhD and a postgrad, and you might even be lucky to get a third of a name on a theorem or something along those lines. He did something else you probably know. It's called Pascal's pyramid. And you start with the 1 at the top. I see some nodding faces. This is good. And then you just sum up the numbers for things below. So 1 plus 2 equals 3, 3 plus 1 equals 4, and on and on, and on and on and on and on. This pyramid has a whole bunch of properties about it. I won't get into too many of them, but the one that I think is most interesting is that I'm going to take all the odd numbers and I'm going to color them in. I'm going to take all the even numbers and I'm going to keep them white. And what you see is this. Back in the 17th century, Blaise Pascal found signal in mathematics and rigor. In the 1970s, Sierpinski found signal in randomness and chaos. There's signal in all your data. And in the decades of experience that Lixar has done with our data scientists, we have yet to find a case where we can't find that signal and tease it out. How do I do that? I think outside the box. I try and attack a problem and look at ways of considering things that hadn't been done before. Does relative data count? Does foreign exchange matter? Does the demographic or the type of product you're trying to upsell really affect it? Are they previous clients? Have they churned? All those types of hypothetical things change the way I do my work. All right, let's try this one ourselves. Any Haligonians in the room? 1, 2, 3, yeah, we're all out here again, aren't we? I used to live in Bedford for a couple years. This is the Bedford Basin. And during World War II, the merchant marines would actually set that up as a staging area to bring supplies across to the other side to fight in the war. And then under the cover of darkness, they would leave, knowing that U-boats were there to hunt them down. As part of the plan to get those Marines across, the Allies would intentionally bomb ships. Can anyone in this room think of a reason why the Allies would do that and why that'd be useful? Awkward. Enigma. Hey, there's a history buff in the room. I love it. That's right. For those who know their history, know about the German Enigma machine. I was fortunate enough to be in England just last week, and I actually saw this thing, and it's a humbling experience. Enigma was the German encryption way to keep their messages hidden from the Allies, to communicate with the front lines, to tell everyone what they want to do. Encryption increased the noise and reduced the signal so the Allies couldn't figure out what the Germans were saying. But thanks to Alan Turing and the good people at Bletchley Park, they actually cracked Enigma. They figured it out. For those who have read The Imitation Game or read Cryptonomicon, you know how the story ends. What do you do with this information? It's a double-edged sword. The first time that you take that information and do something that the Germans think wasn't possible, they know they've broken the code and you're back to square one. If you don't do anything with the information, it's valueless. You're not getting useful. You're still stuck at square one. So what do? You increase the noise. You purposely bomb ships so the Germans think that coincidences just happened. Now, there's no one on the ship. It's an empty ship, but they don't know that. You make it so the patrol just happens to be in the right spot to attack a boat that just happens to have a high admiral on it. You increase the noise. They don't know what you're doing. Many problems in this world can be framed from a signal versus noise problem. And if you can frame it that way, you can use it to predict the future. This work saved years off the war. And what took a giant room full of people years in an entire park up at Bletchley can now be done in the cloud. I'm partial to Microsoft Azure myself. Google's got a great one. Amazon's doing great work as well. Never before have we had the mathematics, the technology, the computing power, and the streams of data to do the type of work we're doing now. This is why cars will soon be driving themselves. All right, so what does this mean for you? A couple quick examples. Let's say you run a national park or an event where you want to predict how many people are going to come to AccelerateOTT. Well, given historical data, knowing what day of the week it was in the forecast for this park and how many visitors you had on those days, you can build a model that will tell you what you expect with a range of error of how many people to expect to come to that day. Let's say you work over at Tiny's Pastures and you're worried about many of the senior managers leaving, or you're worried about your clients for your SaaS product for the next 12 months leaving. Well, if you have data about these types of people and their age and demographics, which you should have, and knowing historically if that they left or not, then you can build a model that will predict with a high degree of I'm getting hungry too, with a high degree of precision if they're likely to leave or not. Let's say you work at the airport in Ottawa and you want to know how many staff you need on resources for the gates or the front desks. I don't know if you've ever been stuck on the tarmac just waiting for half an hour, but that's worst because you're so close to home. Given data about how many planes arrive and things like the PLF, passenger load factor, it's how full the plane is, and knowing how many staff you needed before, you can predict how many people you would need on any given day. Now, it's not as simple as that. Those models would suck because the data's not good. You're probably going to have much bigger data sets with much more historical data, but that's great. The more data you have, the better it is. And it's the job of people like me to go through and say, this is useful, this is not, and this is the error that you can expect. But the big takeaway, like I said, if you have a large amount of data and you know a right answer that you want to guess and forecast in the future, you can do that and we can help. My name is Jim Provost, and thank you very much for your time.